Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our first event in nearly 2 years, in-person event. It is a tremendous honor, and the fact is that we are here to honor one of the most extraordinary change agents for the energy arena in history, and that would be Charif Souki. I'm Sheila Hollis. I'm the Acting Executive Director of the United States Energy Association. I've been performing that responsibility for the past year and a half. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to do it and to work with our tremendous board, chaired by Vicky Bailey, who you'll be hearing from, and also with a remarkable staff who continue to carry out a very complex mission throughout the world, working in 104 countries throughout the world, obviously not in person now, but some international travel. But most of it is virtual for the moment. But we continue to reach out to our members and well beyond, and to represent the U.S. government and the American energy industry worldwide. I'm grateful, very grateful for the board's support for the past year and the dedicated efforts of our staff. And the remarkable thing that we're able to do here is to honor and celebrate with one of the real leaders of the energy industry in the world today, and that is Charif Souki. You'll be hearing a lot more about him, but obviously he is a change agent for the world. He reversed thinking about LNG, which many of us had grown into over decades. He turned the tables and turned it into an amazing new endeavor going worldwide and helping the United States and helping the world by providing energy to parts of the world that really need it. Well, hopefully we'll be having more celebrations in person and hope we can include Charif and his wonderful people. I'd like to give a special thank you to Majida for her hard work on this too. We're going to have 2 remarkable speakers today. We're going to have Jack Futcher, and we're also going to have Dan Yergin, and they will be with us for this amazing event, and that is demonstrative of the impact that Charif has had and the people who call him a friend and a leader. We are so happy to have you here today. I'm going to be handing over the platform to Ken Silverstein, a famous reporter for Forbes, and also a tremendous energy person in and of his own right, and one of the experts in the country. That we are so delighted that you're here, and so we move now to honor Charif, but to hear first from Ken, and who will be the MC of the program. Thank you so much, Ken, for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Sheila for extending an invitation. When she did so, I was in Ukraine writing about Nord Stream 2. And, you know, my time and my senses were a little off balance, and she said, well, can you be here for the Wednesday program? And I was in Ukraine, and I said, no, I'm in Ukraine, I can't. And then I saw that my schedule was such that I'd be back, and so I wanted to be here, so I said, oh no, I'll be here. And so here I am, and my first obligation is to remind everyone from the powers that be that when you're not eating, or I think just eating, you got to wear your mask. That's my first duty as your MC. As Sheila gave me a wonderful introduction, and there's no reason for me to go into any further depth. You can see that story on Nord Stream 2 and other stories I write simply by going to the Forbes site, the energy site, and looking for not just my stories, but other stories from very renowned writers and reporters. I'm very familiar with Charif before I got here. Charif and I had a chance to sit and chat for 30 or 40 minutes in a different room. And I will be writing a story about him, which you guys, I guess that can be one of the things you look up. And I appreciate very much that he took the time to speak with me and to elaborate on his ideas. And right now, and I look forward to what Charif is going to say when he's up here. And right now, what we need to do is the chairman of the USEA board, Vicky Bailey, has some recorded remarks And with that, I'm going to take a seat.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vicky Bailey, Executive Chair of the United States Energy Association. And while I am disappointed I could not be with you in person today, I am delighted, along with the entire board, to welcome you all to the National Press Club for our first in-person event since January of 2020. It was the start of a new decade, yet no one could have foreseen the events of the last 18 months. We have faced many challenges in getting to this day. That's why I'm especially thrilled and proud that we're here today to celebrate a very significant occasion, the presentation of the U.S. Energy Award. Just to give a little history, the United States Energy Award was established in 1989 to recognize preeminent energy leaders and their contribution to the understanding of energy issues. The selection committee, composed of national energy leaders, examines each nominee for a track record in leadership and a history of proven accomplishments, including international contributions. The nominee's support of the mission of USEA is also a major consideration. The United States Energy Award Selection Committee is proud to honor Charif Souki, the co-founder and chairman of Tellurian, as the recipient of the 2020-2021 United States Energy Award. Charif was selected in recognition of his outstanding efforts to advance global initiatives and for his support of USEA. I know you have Charif's bio in your program. Charif began his career as an investment banker, spending 20-plus years specializing in financing small-cap companies in the energy industry. With his extraordinary entrepreneurial spirit, he founded Cheniere Energy in 1996, transforming the U.S. liquefied natural gas business into a globally respected industry and helping to usher in the shale revolution. Charif, your vision has enabled the U.S. to become a net energy exporter and a leader in natural gas production, helping provide millions around the world with energy access. Your courage, your leadership, and your dedication are all well known, and we applaud your many accomplishments as the well-deserved recipient of the 2020-2021 U.S. Energy Award. Congratulations, Charif. We're honored to have you here today. From me personally, thank you.
I'm here now to introduce our next speaker, who I have written about and who I'm a big fan of. And his last book, The New Map, I thought was a terrific read. I also wrote about it. Mr. Yergin, it's my pleasure to introduce Dan Yergin, who is just a wonderful, wonderful, has a brain trust that I don't think can be surpassed. Mr. Yergin.
Well, you know, I've always thought of Charif as an innovator, and I think it's an amazing new innovation that he's introduced, which is an in-person meeting. Isn't this incredible to be at such a thing as this? I'm very pleased to be able to be part of this discussion and honoring Charif, and certainly as part of USEA, and thank Sheila and Kim and the whole staff of USEA for what they've done over the last, I guess it's 18 months now. And it's great. And as like everybody else who's involved, it means a lot to be part of this organization. So sometimes big things happen because of little things. And we're here today because of a couple of phone calls that Charif received about 13 years ago. The U.S. Energy Award, as Vicky pointed out, honors somebody who's had a great impact on U.S. energy industry and on the energy position of the United States. Today, we're honoring somebody who's, starting with that phone call, who has had that impact, has also had the impact on the global industry and on the position of the United States in the world. And really, you kind of mentioned the new map. This individual has had a key role in drawing the new map. That's the title of my book, the new map of world energy, both metaphorically and in very literal terms, in terms of trade routes that just would not have been imagined 13 years ago. And of course, it's Charif Souki. And the importance of what Charif has done is highlighted by what's happening today in the global energy markets. I'm not sure whether it's a crunch or a crisis or maybe both, but without this huge innovation in LNG and the breakthroughs it represented, things would be a lot worse than they are today, even as we worry and wonder about, as we were talking at the table, about what's going to happen this winter. And it underlies the essential role that the U.S. has in terms of bringing balance to the global energy market. Yes, so those phone calls to Charif. Now, some of you will remember back a little longer than that, when the U.S. was going to run out of natural gas. And the U.S. was going to become integrated with the global energy markets by being the biggest buyer of LNG in the world, not the biggest supplier. I remember being at a conference in Denver in the summer of 2003, where the whole discussion in preparation for a very important national report was going to be on the subject of how do we adapt to the vast amount of LNG that we're going to need to import. And about the U.S. was going to be this buyer, the biggest buyer in the world. And at that point, of course, the fear of shortage was really very great. And people were scrambling to respond. And one person who scrambled to respond was Charif Souki. As I understand, Charif had been poking around looking for gas without a lot of success. I think we'd all agree that Charif is not exactly the prototype of the typical wildcatter, investment banker, entrepreneur, variety of enterprises. And how many wildcatters actually wear double-breasted suits? I mean, I think that's the question. But Charif, being an entrepreneur, saw the need to import LNG, and he got really busy building a facility. And then came those phone calls to him that said, it's not that we have too little gas, the problem is we have too much gas, and we're going to need to see if we can find international markets for them. And could you turn around your planned regasification plant and turn it into a liquefaction plant? And I've always wondered what your initial reaction was, Charif, but I imagine it was a feeling of desperation since you'd raised hundreds of millions of dollars and it looked like you had made a very big, bad bet on the future. But Charif could read the signals and he got busy and to turn it into an export facilities. No shortages of challenges. First of all, I think it would cost about 10 times as much as the original plan. So secondly, there were financing challenges of all kind, engineering challenges, what we today would call supply chain challenges, and regulatory and political challenges, some of the very significant hurdles that people thought you couldn't get over. And I think those, Charif knows, and those who work with him, there were a lot of ups and downs and a lot of downs and ups, but Charif stayed the course. He was all in with entrepreneurial energy, persuasiveness, a lot of persuasiveness, and perseverance. And I think the confidence that comes from the optimism of an entrepreneur. I mean, who just sees, what do they call Steve Jobs, a reality distortion factor. You don't quite see reality, and you keep going, and you kind of change the reality. And lo and behold, those calls were in 2008. 2016, the first cargo was exported to Brazil. And then a few months later, the first cargo went through the Panama Canal to China. And I actually put a picture in the new map of that ship going through the Panama Canal. It wasn't easy to get there. I think the total was something like $20 billion of investment to make this happen. And a lot of work, but it worked. And today, if we look at the overall natural gas position in the United States, when I looked this morning, I think our production is about 80% higher than it was when you got that phone call, Charif. And U.S. exports of LNG are about 12% of the total. Obviously, it was Cheniere, now it's Tellurian. And Charif and his colleagues have been an innovator not only with exporting LNG, but in the gas market itself, how gas is priced, the different ways of doing that, how the markets work and connect. And certainly we have seen just the flip side of what was foreseen in 2003. We've seen a vast integration of the US with the global gas industry, but in a flip side, where we're one of the big three of LNG exporters. Probably when Russia gets going, it'll be the big four. And despite all the challenges, when we do our numbers at IHS Markit, it continues to grow. So what's happened with this innovation that Charif led the charge on has contributed in so many different ways to the United States, including the balance of payments. In the new map, I calculated that with LNG and not importing oil anymore, saves the U.S. about $400 billion a year compared to where we were. You add $400 billion and $400 billion, and you start to get up to like that infrastructure bill that's in Congress right now. It's a lot of money. And I think it's not well recognized what a contribution this has been to the overall economy of the United States. The global importance is clear in terms of energy security. It's the foundation of relationships with many countries, Japan, Korea. I'm on the energy think tank for the government of India, and I can see that LNG exports and energy has become an important foundation in a much improved and expanded relationship between the United States and India. And of course, this thing that people on Capitol Hill keep beating their heads over about energy security in Europe, as though LNG doesn't exist and there's not flexibility, but the growth of LNG and the contribution of the United States to that has been a very important contribution to energy security for Europe, and as opposed to all the concerns that, at least on Capitol Hill, you keep hearing. I want to hasten to add that Charif did not do all of this by himself. He's done it with many other people, some of whom are in this room, also worked together to make it happen. But Charif has been at the forefront, the pioneer, the person who, in face of skepticism, delivered the proof of concept on a massive scale. He's delivered the gas, and I think we can say with this award, Charif has delivered. And that is why we recognize him today with the United States Energy Award. Congratulations, Charif.
Thank you, Dan. I'm now going to introduce Jack Futcher. He is the Vice Chairman of the Bechtel Group and the former President and Chief Operating Officer of the Bechtel Corporation. And Jack is also the Chairman of the Board of the United States Energy Association. And I know I've been looking forward to meeting Jack. So, Jack. We've not met before.
Well, Ken, thank you for that introduction. And it's certainly a pleasure for me to be here today to recognize my friend and colleague, partner, Charif Souki, as the 2020-2021 recipient of the USEA Energy Award. So it'll be difficult to cover all of Charif's accomplishments over a 10-minute period, but I'll do the best I can. As others have said, Charif is currently he was the co-founder and currently the executive chairman of the board of Tellurian. And as Dan said, he's recognized as the pioneer of the LNG industry in the United States. And what's transpired over the last half dozen years in LNG within the U.S. is really extraordinary. The U.S. became an exporter of LNG in 2016. And over the 5-year period to last year, the United States LNG exports have risen to be the number 3 exporting country in the world, following Australia and Qatar. And this year, as Dan mentioned, there is a likelihood that the U.S. will be the leading exporting country for LNG in the globe. And that's an extraordinary amount of growth that's occurred over a half dozen years. And it's largely attributable to this gentleman that we're recognizing today. What I'd like to do in my remarks is to share with you some of the highlights and the accomplishments of Charif's career that have enabled him and me to be here today. The journey started in 1996 when Charif founded Cheniere Energy as an oil and gas exploration company. And in 2004, when natural gas was at very low supply in the US and there was a tremendous amount of demand, as Dan mentioned, Charif decided to build an LNG import receiving terminal in Sabine Pass, Louisiana. Now, this facility was ready for operation in 2008. And if you look at the data, 2008 was the year when US shale gas production really began to hit the market. And it really idled the import facility that Charif had built in Sabine Pass because it just became unnecessary. So Charif was the first person to see the opportunity of liquefying abundant US shale gas and exporting it as LNG to locations all around the globe. And in 2009, he proceeded with converting the regas terminal at Sabine Pass into a 2-train LNG liquefaction terminal. And the production out of that facility was predicted to be about 8 million tons of LNG a year. We actually ended up exceeding that. It took extraordinary skill for Charif to navigate the regulatory and permitting requirements at both the federal and the state level. And at the same time he was doing that, raising the financing required for a major investment like this, as Dan mentioned, was an incredible feat, a real accomplishment. And he was able to pave the path and set the course for many individuals and companies that followed him. He laid all the groundwork. So I always thought when I think about this, I think it's the best example of turning lemons into lemonade. You know, it really is. This man did it. And it's absolutely extraordinary when you consider a couple of factors. One, Dan mentioned it. Charif was not viewed at the time as an industry player. He was an outsider. He didn't grow up in an oil and gas major. And I know from dealing with a lot of people in the majors that there was a lot of skepticism about what he intended to do and whether or not his vision was credible. And people used to talk to me about, we hear all the great things, but let's see whether or not any of this can be done. The second huge hurdle was at the time, Cheniere was a relatively small company with a market cap that was small in relation to the amount of money that he had to go raise for an investment of this size. So the size of his company was completely disproportionate to the size of the investment required, but yet through a lot of persuasion and a really compelling business case, he was able to convince the financing community to support him and provide him with the funding that he needed for the jobs to go forward. But he didn't stop there, and I remember it well. We started those 2 trains, and very quickly it was clear Charif's vision was to add 4 more trains at Sabine Pass and 3 trains at a new site that he had acquired in Corpus Christi, Texas. And what's incredible about this is that he decided to proceed with these expansions before the first 2 trains at Sabine Pass were in production and producing revenue. And I remember that a lot of people questioned Charif's the sanity of that plan. But I can't think of a greater example of entrepreneurial instincts, courage, and just a conviction of will to proceed when everyone around you has got a different idea and is saying you should do something different. This person's had the courage to proceed and great entrepreneurial instincts. But in the end, vision only becomes reality if you can execute. And Charif's track record in execution is better than anyone in the industry. Charif left Cheniere in December of 2015, but he set the course for that company. And all of the LNG trains that were included in his original vision are now in production for Cheniere. And every one of them was put into production early, and several of them set new industry benchmarks for project performance. And it was largely because of your ability, Charif, to always focus on what was important and eliminate all the noise that you have every day around project execution. You knew what was important, and you always focused on that. You didn't get distracted by any of the noise. So if I ask people today in the room to name the companies in 2020 that produce the most LNG, I would bet most of you would say Chevron or ExxonMobil or Shell or BP, or maybe Total. The correct answer would be Shell, followed closely by Cheniere. And this year, in 2021, Cheniere will be the leading producer of LNG for companies in the world. And that, to me, Charif, is extraordinary when you consider that you decided to get Cheniere into the LNG liquefaction business a dozen years ago. And the company went from nothing to this year will be the leading producer in the world. It's absolutely extraordinary. So let me talk a little bit about what Charif's been up to lately, because this guy, believe me, this guy doesn't, as you well know, he doesn't rest. He co-founded Tellurian early in 2016 with fellow industry icon Martin Houston. And Tellurian is now developing its first LNG export facility called Driftwood Lng in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And my company is fortunate that Charif and his team have selected Bechtel to do this work. And Charif has always been a terrific customer, the best of customers. No matter where I was in the world, Charif, no matter what I was doing, when you called, I answered. And because you're that kind of person, I know you did the same when I called you. Charif is all about speed. Everything's got to be fast. And he knows that in project delivery, speed requires fast decision-making and then being accountable for your decisions. And over the years of us working together, I could always count on Charif for those two attributes. He's actually the only customer that I've ever had on fixed-price work that said to me, if you get into trouble executing this project, I'll help. Now, lots of customers say that, and so I've learned over the years to say, okay, I've heard that before. But when we were working on Sabine with him, we did get into trouble. We had trouble with welder training and welder retention. And Charif was the first customer I've ever dealt with that actually backed up what he said, and he stepped in and helped. One of Charif's greatest attributes is his ability to make the complex simple, and then his ability to communicate clearly and effectively with a lot of passion, and usually with some really good anecdotes that actually drive home the point perfectly. And I think it's those skills, Charif, that really have enabled you to transform Cheniere into the company it is today, as well as transform the U.S. LNG export business into what it is today. And I have no doubt that you're going to do the same thing at Tellurian. And we look forward to being your partner in trying to accomplish that. Before I close, I'd like to read a message to Charif from Lisa Murkowski, the honorable senator from Alaska, who unfortunately couldn't be with us here today, but she sends a note. She says, "Congratulations, Charif, on receiving the USEA Energy Award. This is a well-earned recognition of your leadership in the energy sector. Well done." So thank you, Charif, for all that you've done for energy production in the United States and how that's affected the world with countries that need cleaner, lower cost energy. You've made a difference. And it's great to be able to recognize you today with this award. So congratulations. So Charif, what you have to do, we have to come up and we have to get a picture behind the award, which is going to be tight.
Yeah, in this age, it's not good. Thanks, Jack.
Oh, they told me not to touch it, but okay. You want me to hand it to him? Okay, Charif. I hope I don't drop it. Yeah, because it's not connected.
Okay. So Sheila could get the picture too.
Here, let's try to move over.
Hey, man. Well done.
It's okay. We can just do it here, like this. Thank you. All right. Should I just?
I think we can all welcome Charif.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Thank you very much for organizing this. My career has been defined by two principles, really. The first one is necessity is the mother of invention. As Dan very well explained, you have to adapt. And you can do that if you have the second very important component, and what is defined by my career. Having people who were friends, supporters, allowing me to have the confidence in what I was doing. And I would start with Barry Worthington, who recruited me for the USEA at a time where we were a very small company, but he saw something, he said, you belong here, join us, and be here. An organization like the USEA that allowed me to have credibility in the business. People like Dan, who whose recognition was so critical, because why would somebody with his background and his reputation and his influence take interest in somebody that was starting in this business, as both of them said, not from the industry, not really related. I'm not a geologist, I'm not a geoscientist, I don't have a record in this business, but they believed in me and trusted me. And most important, but I can go on first because I leave the most important to the last. Companies like ConocoPhillips and Chevron that believed in what I was doing and were willing to sign agreements with me, organizations like the USEA, CSEA, the industry in general, that was, in spite of what Jack said, maybe I didn't hear the skepticism. There was a different sound. so I thought that I was being accepted. but it gave me the support to really continue to do what I would believe in. And I have to say that the most striking thing in this context is the trust that Riley Bechtel had in me when I had a market cap of $40 million. And I told him that I was going to build a $2 billion project. And he looked at me and said, I believe you're going to do it. I'm in. And since then, the Bechtel family has been always a partner and a supporter for everything that I've tried to do in my life. And those are the things that allowed me to get to where I am today and to do what we do today. I have to say one very quick word in terms of necessity is the mother of the invention. This is going to be critical today because we just reached an inflection point. We have been talking about crosswise between, frankly, the developed world and the not developed world, talking about what our priorities are on a global basis, whether survival is the more important existential issue or whether climate is the more important existential issue. And because we've taken a position that has not been very carefully thought out about what the consequences are going to be in a very, very short period of time, and maybe it was aggravated by COVID because there was a pause button that was pressed that said demand for everything has declined for a period of time, and all of a sudden the rubber band is tighter than ever before. And we're now in a position where Europe is going to suffer the first consequences and join the non-developed countries in seeing what is really the existential threat, not being able to eat or thinking about what's going to happen 30 years from now. Now, there are ways of dealing with both, but that is not what we've done until now. We need to rethink the way that we're going to go forward. In this context, America has a responsibility because, as Dan said, and as Jack confirmed, we are now the largest oil producer in the world. We are now the largest gas producer in the world. We are in the top 3 in terms of gas export. Very quickly, we're going to be the leading exporter of natural gas on a global basis. What happens on the oil side is also very influential, starting from America as a major producer to what is going to happen around the rest of the world. We have to remember that 15% of the world population consumes 40% of the world's energy. That the rest of the world, the 6 billion people who don't have the luck of being in Western Europe and some countries in Asia, are aspiring to catch up. And nothing that is done or talked about or said is going to ever change this. They want to catch up. They want to live like us. The demand on energy, not just natural gas, but energy in general, is going to be enormous. And we, as one of the top producers, the energy superpower today, have to be part of this global transformation. And that is another cycle of necessity that is now falling on us. And the first major manifestation is going to be this winter in Europe, when electricity bills, transportation bills, and heating bills are going to go through the roof, and people are going to have to rethink their priorities. So this is important. This is an ongoing transformation and evolution, and I'm afraid we're going to have to find a new word for the energy transition. It is more like an energy evolution. What is going to happen as the 6 billion people in the rest of the world are trying to live like us? I really appreciate the help of the USEA for many years, not just now, when I was a much smaller company, and the help of all the friends and people who believed in me, who've made me able to achieve what I've done. So thank you very much, and thank you for your recognition.
Well, thank you, Charif. As I said, we met earlier, and we're friends now, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me one-on-one. Dan, thank you again for your comments. You're always insightful. In fact, I want to give you my business card so I can include some of your insight into this next piece, if I may. And Jack, as I said, we've not had the chance to actually meet before, but I'm so glad to have met you and to have listened to your comments. Wonderful, and I can see that there's a friendship among all of you that runs long and it runs deep, and I'm so happy to be a part of this program. Sheila is going to make the closing remarks, and I'm going to sit down.
Ken, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for your brilliant reporting over the years, and thank you for your friendship and support here today. I would like to close by saying you don't know what you got till it's gone, and we had that lesson in the 1970s when natural gas was unavailable, and we were on our knees begging for natural gas from any source we could get it. I had the pleasure of representing the state of New York in that time, and it was brutal, except when we were able to get a supply of gas from Canada after much begging and pleading, and a remarkable deal that we cut on behalf of the state of New York when 250,000 people went back to work in one day. And people actually had natural gas to heat their homes and to keep on moving as a society. So sometimes the benefit of having lived it brings your wisdom to the table right now. And Charif didn't have to live all that, but he has embraced what I think is got to be recognized as a reality in the world now, which is there's 30% of the world that has no energy whatsoever. They need it. And certainly USEA is trying to help them get it from a variety of sources, but LNG is certainly going to play a critical role in that. And the U.S. may as well step up and be the major player in the world as opposed to letting another country take the lead. Charif had that vision before anybody else really was able to crystallize that vision, and we thank you for your contribution to America and to society. And we thank all of you for your time and effort to venture out into the real physical world as opposed to the computer world. And it's a real pleasure and an honor to share our first meeting for about 2 years in person with such an extraordinary group of people. So thank you, and we will certainly continue our journey together. God bless you all. Thank you.